So we started off with this kit right here. This is the AMT 29 Ford Woody and RPU combination kit. Can be built supposedly one of 4 ways, but I think you could build it more than 4 ways, but who am I to argue? I'm going to be building the Woody version of this 29 Ford. The idea initially with the build on this kit is going to be, I'm going to say like a mid to late 40s kind of beater, hot rod sort of idea. And of course, since we're talking about the Maxatawny Surf Club presenting model builds with Pharto, what better way to build this Woody than as a surf-style machine? The first step that I'm going to take in this build is the engine. Now, this comes with 2. It comes with the 4-banger as well as a flathead V8. However, I don't particularly care for the flathead V8 that came in this kit. The main reason is because it is completely chrome. Just about all of the parts, with the exception of the fan belt, is chrome. I really want to use the 4-banger. So, as you can see, this is the completed 4-banger. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm kind of thinking to myself, I would really like to have some kind of speed equipment on this here 4-banger, just because I want to keep the hood off of this so you can see it. So I decided to go through the box of extra engine that I have laying around, and I found another 4-banger in there that had some Anson speed equip. Looks like it's got 297s, so it's got a couple of neat things on there. Pretty basic. There's a couple of parts that are missing, but I sort of compared them visually, the one that I found in my parts box and the one that came with the kit, and they look to be the same size, which they should technically. It seems like they mount in the chassis the same way too. So that's another good thing. So I decided that I am going to use this parts box 4-banger, which, if I'm not mistaken, was from the 29 or 30 Ford RPU kit from Revell, the Hot Rod series from back in the, I'm gonna say that's probably sometime in the 80s, early to mid 80s, maybe even late 70s. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, so went ahead and kind of stripped down the parts box 4-banger and cleaned it up a little bit, painted it up, and decided to just use that. Now, the couple of things that you'll see here, I was missing a starter for this and also a fan carrier. So I was missing the starter and I was missing the carrier, so I had to scratch build a couple of those. Not that big of it. I needed to do that in order for this thing to actually look correct, especially with it being without a hood. So now you can see here, this is a complete, painted, ready to go into the kit, hot rodded 4-banger. Vroom vroom. So, of course, as usual, any of the parts in this kit that are going to need to be painted will get primed. And as you'll see here, the priming has already been completed and some of the painting has already been completed. I'm going with kind of a burgundy red sort of color because I thought it would match the wood, the wood grain, the wood color pretty nicely without being too crazily contrasting with each other. I thought it would complement. That's what I went. And you'll see that I've got the parts box 4-banger in the chassis, so to speak, or in the engine compartment, just to get an idea of what this is going to look like. Not much on the driver's side. Most everything's hanging off the passenger side. As I mentioned earlier, the original build idea behind this was going to be like a mid to late 40s beater style hot rod kind of surf wagony concept. However, when I got to assembling the suspension on this particular kit, I realized how absolutely horrible the stance on this model is with the stock suspension heights. And I could not bring myself to build that. I couldn't do it. It was sat way too high. That ended up shifting the entire concept of the build because now I wanted this suspension to be lower, I went with some, once again, part box suspension. I believe both of the pieces, the front suspension and the rear suspension, came out of an AMT 1939 Ford kit. So what I needed to do with that was I cut the rear spring off of the differential and remounted it to the top in order to get the rear differential centered in the wheel well of the vehicle. Plus, it made it easier to lower it. I had to modify the spring to get it into the cross member, but it allowed me to lower the back at a pretty nice, I like it, the height that it turned out. The front suspension, when I tried to modify the kit suspension, it was just kind of disastrous. So like I said, I pulled the front suspension from a 40 Ford kit because it had the same spring position, which made it a lot easier for me to modify, get that spring to fit the front cross member, and then also it drops the whole front end of the vehicle a lot, which gives it a much nicer stance. I'm much happier with the way it looks. However, once again, now, as I said before, that kind of adjusted what I was going to do as far as this entire build was going. It now turned into an early 60s hot rod, woody surf machine. Same basic concept, just a different era. Okay, so the next step in this build is the wood inlay panels on the body. And just based on what I've seen out in the wild in person, the inlay panels on most woodies are a darker color than the structural body frame wood. I had originally painted it all the same color ahead of time, which was intentional, and then I wanted to try to do something to bring out the wood grain, especially on the inlay panels. So what I ended up using was sepia colored ink, which is a water-based ink that I use when I do watercolor painting. And I thought it would be just dark enough, not too dark, but I had never had the need to do any kind of wood grain on a model before. So this was a completely new process to me, and I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants trying to figure out how I was going to do this. What I ended up with, as you can see here, I think it turned out pretty good. And later on, as you'll see, when the two pieces are combined, you'll be able to see the contrast. I think it turned out pretty good. I didn't want 100% consistency between pieces. I kind of wanted to look like it sort of had a little bit of wear, but I didn't want to overly patina the wood grain, so to speak. What the hell was that? Well, anyway. So the next portion build is the interior. Is that the cat puking? Hold on a second. Oh, well, okay, so back to this. I got interrupted by a cat puking. So, regardless of the situation with vomiting cats, the next item of business on my agenda was the interior. One of the things that I did with this build, as I got to this stage, was I thought of every lyric from old surf song and kind of applied them to this build. Maybe you'll be able to figure out what those are by watching this here video and checking out the pictures. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to let you think about it. But regardless, in these couple of pictures here is the interior. And I was originally going to do the seats in green. I don't know why I wanted to do that. But then I realized, man, I don't know that green is going to go so well with the burgundy color of the metal parts of the body. So I just went with a standard old flat black and then kind of, how do I want to say, I don't know if I want to call it weathered them, but kind of softened it a little bit with some pastels and a very, very soft brush. It actually is probably a cosmetic brush, but whatever. It worked. It gave it just enough on like where the piping and the threads are would be on real fabric that it kind of toned it down a little bit, but at the same time brightened it. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but anyway, now that most of the sub-assemblies are complete, can kind of start mocking up once again what this is gonna look like when it's 100% assembled, and I'm kind of digging it. So as I got into the final assembly of this wonderful 1929 Ford Morning Woody kit, I've discovered that the header that I had used when I assembled the non-kit four-banger would no longer fit. Kind of just had the bends in the header, were kind of throwing it up against the inside of the frame rail, and it just did not want to fit in there no matter what I did. So this was one thing that I didn't really want to do because I kind of think it makes the kit look a little bit, and this is going to sound goofy, but a little bit too hot rodish. With it being just a four banger in this thing, I just kind of wanted it to have a little bit of a speed equipment appeal, but not anything too over the top. But unfortunately, with this header not fitting, and I couldn't find anything in all the extra parts that I have that would actually fit on this thing correctly to give me any kind of hope of making it look decent. So what ended up happening? I had to build some headers. Well, actually header, not headers. See here, I bent some tubing. Then I kind of took some measurements. Well, not kind of, but I did. I took some measurements off of the four-banger block to get the location of the exhaust ports. And I kind of just left them all the same length. I oversized them knowing I was going to have to cut them down, but I wanted them to be too big. I should say too long instead of too short, because you can only cut it off so many times and it's still too short. Anyway, I assembled the header tubes in two sections and then combined the sections together, then made all of my length cuts from the block to the bends and to where I wanted the tubes to end, which then of course posed another issue that they're kind of pointed right at the end of the cowl, right at where the wood frame of the body starts. So I kind of threw a little bit of paint on there to make it look like the exhaust was blowing on there. Luckily, it didn't light the thing on fire because it's made of wood. A couple of fun things with this here 29 Ford Woody pickup kit is it comes with a bicycle. Looks like a Schwinn Stingray to me, but I am far from an aficionado on bicycles. But it's a cool little prop type thing to throw on here. You can see here's the picture of the chrome sprue. And it's also got the flathead on there too. You can probably see why I didn't want to use it. I just didn't think it was going to look right. So anyway, this was something that's kind of cool to go with the kit or to use with something else. And then there's also another piece that I found on one of the sprues. And I didn't know what it was for. I didn't know what it was. And I'm still not 100% sure what it really is. Because as I went through the instructions, its item number is not called out anywhere on the instructions. So I don't know exactly what this is supposed to be. However, as I was looking at it, it reminded me of a skateboard. So it is going to be a skateboard as far as I'm concerned. And I do not have any finished pictures of it because it's still a work in progress. And I didn't want to use it for this build anyway because I already had a green surfboard to throw in there as an extra prop. So you'll probably see this skateboard pop up maybe in another video. One of the other things that's kind of cool is the kit, as I mentioned, can be built according to the box 4 different ways. But it comes, and what's nice about that is it comes with all the body parts, the cab, the windshield frame, the dashboard, the bed, the tailgate, the floorboards, and I believe seats. I'm not 100% sure. But it comes with all the parts that you can actually build a second model out of this kit if you have some spare parts from other kits lying around. I think most of us probably do. I had more, but long story short, not quite as much as I had. Oh yeah! Anyway, I did dig up a Model A frame, and I also found a track T style grill and nose in the parts box. So I think I might use that. And this is probably going to become, I'm going to say like late 30s, early 40s jalopy drag kind of build at some point.